Every summer and winter, football fans refresh social media waiting for the famous words, "Here we go." But have you ever wondered why some transfers take weeks? Some happen overnight. And journalists like Fabrizio Romano, Ben Jacobs, David Ornstein seems to know about deals long before clubs announce them. In this video, we'll break down exactly how football transfers work, from transfer windows and release clauses to loan deals, add-ons, amortization, and why some transfers take forever to complete. 1. What is a transfer window? A transfer window is the period when clubs are allowed to register new players. Most major leagues have two windows. Summer window, the biggest transfer period of the year. Winter window usually takes place in January and allows clubs to strengthen their squads mid-season. Different countries have slightly different days, but generally, England, June to early September, Spain, July to early September, Italy, July to early September, Germany the same. The key point is that players' registration must be completed before the window closes, and this is why we often see deadline day drama. Free transfers plus contracted players. There are two main ways clubs sign players. Free transfer. This happens when a player contract expires. The selling club receives no transfer fee. Examples include Eriksen. When he joined Man United, he came for free. Zlatan, when he joined Man United, he came for free. These are just examples. However, free does not mean cheap. Players often receive what's called signing on fees, agent commission, higher wages. Then we go to players under contract. If a player still has years remaining on his contract, the buying club must negotiate a transfer fee. What happens when a player has 1 year left? This is where things become interesting. If a player has only 1 year remaining on his contract, his current club risks losing him for free the following year. That weakens the selling club's negotiating position. For example, a player worth 60 million with 4 years left may only be worth 20 to 30 million with 1 year left. The Bosman rule. Players are allowed to negotiate with foreign clubs once they enter the final 6 months of their contract. This means contract expires June 2027. From January 2027, they can legally speak to foreign clubs and sign a pre-contract agreement. The club receives nothing when the player leaves. This rule came from the famous Jean-Marc Bosman case. What is a release clause? A release clause is a figure written into player's contract. If another club is offered that amount, the selling club must allow negotiations. Examples: Neymar left Barcelona after his 222 million release clause was activated. Many Spanish contracts include mandatory release clauses. Another example is Haaland when he came from Dortmund. He came after his release clause was activated. Meeting a release clause does not guarantee a transfer. The player must still agree personal terms, salary, contract length. Without the player's approval, the deal cannot happen. How loan deals work. Sometimes clubs do not buy a player immediately. Instead, they sign him on loan. The buying club temporarily uses the player while another club still owns him. Example: Sancho, Rashford, Rasmus, all those guys, they're on loan. for different reasons. Other examples, Weghorst, when he came to Manchester United, he came on a loan. Sofian Amrabat, when he came to Manchester United, he came on a loan. So when it's a loan, it means there's an agreement. The club which is using the player, they pay a certain percentage of the fee, and the club which owns the player pays the remainder. Then there's what's called loan with option to buy. The buying club can choose whether to purchase the player later, or if they don't want, they are not forced to do so. There's this thing which is called loan with an obligation to buy. This is the difference. The club must purchase the player once certain conditions are met. Examples: club avoids relegation. Club qualifies for Europe, like what happened with Rasmus and Napoli. Player makes a certain number of appearances. Once these things are triggered, the transfer becomes permanent. But if the club doesn't want it, like what happened with the Jadon Sancho at Chelsea, they have to pay a fine. They paid a 5 million fine to Manchester United because they didn't want Jadon Sancho. 6. What are add-ons? Add-ons are bonus payments included in a transfer agreement. They help clubs reach a compromise. For example, Manchester might pay 50 million guaranteed plus 10 million add-ons. Those add-ons could be triggered if the player scored a certain number of goals, club wins trophies, the player makes set number of appearances, the club qualifies for Champions League. This is why journalists often say 50 million plus add-ons. Not all add-ons are guaranteed. 7. What is a sell-on clause? A sell-on clause allows the original club to receive a percentage of a future sale. Example: Club A sells a player for 20 million. They include a 20% sell-on clause. Years later, Club B sells the player for 60 million. Club A receives a percentage for the future transfer. This is especially common with young players. Let me give you an example of Greenwood. If Greenwood is sold this summer, Manchester United have got a sell-on fee. We've got players like Willy Kambala, when they went to Villarreal. If he's sold again, Manchester United have got what they put a sell-on fee. It allows smaller clubs to benefit from future development also. Then the actual transfer process. Many fans think transfer happen overnight. In reality, they usually happen in stages. Stage 1, interest. Scouts identify the player. Recruitment development study, statistics, injury history, character, tactical fit, and all data available. 2. Player agreement. Agents speak with the buying club. Topics include salary, bonus, contract lengths, image rights. Often journalists hear about this stage first. This is why you sometimes hear personal terms agreed, even though clubs have not reached an agreement yet. Club-to-club negotiations. The clubs negotiate transfer fee, payment structure, add-ons, sell-on clauses. This can take days or even weeks. Stage 4, medical. The player undergoes medical tests. Clubs examine previous injuries, fitness levels, long-term risk. A failed medical can stop a transfer from happening. Examples: Ruud van Nistelrooy. When he was first bought by Sir Alex Ferguson, he failed the medical. He had to come second time around again. There's a lot of players you hear in the transfer market that they have failed their medical. Then after that, if you pass your medical, now is the signing of the contracts. Lawyers complete all documents. Every detail must be checked. 6. Registration. The league and football authority approve the transfer. Only then is the player officially registered, when your details are now on the league's deal sheet where you complete the transfers. That's when you can see a player holding your kit as a new signing. Why transfers sometimes take so long? Fans often ask, why don't United just pay money? Because a transfer is rarely just one payment. Clubs negotiate fee, installments, add-ons, bonuses, agent fees, wage structure, payment dates. A 60 million transfer can involve dozens of legal documents. One disagreement can delay everything. Then we go to what we call amortization. This is one of football's most misunderstood terms. Let's simplify it. Suppose Manchester United buy a player for 50 million on a 5-year contract. The club does not record the entire 50 million as an expense in 1 year. Instead, they divide the 50 million by 5, making it a 10 million per year. Let's just give an example of Joshua Zirkzee. Joshua Zirkzee, he came with a fee which was around 30 million, and it was 10 million per year because his contract is about 3 years. So that's one example of what is called amortization. You have seen also Chelsea, most of their players, they are now on 10-year contracts, 8-year contracts. Is another way of going around this creature called amortization. That yearly accounting cost is called amortization. This is why clubs sometimes offer long contracts. It spreads the accounting cost over more years. For example, 60 million player, 5-year contract, 12 million per year. 6-year contract, 10 million per year. This helps clubs manage financial fair play rules. And some people might wonder how transfer journalists know before everyone else. Many fans think journalists guess. The reality is more complex. Top journalists build relationships with agents, club executives, sporting directors, scouts, lawyers, intermediaries, and sometimes they're even family members. A transfer deal can involve dozens of people. Eventually, information leaks. Different journalists receive different pieces of information. The best reporters verify this information through multiple sources before publishing. That's why names like Fabrizio, Ornstein, Ben Jacobs often report developments days or weeks before the actual announcement. To conclude, the next time you see a transfer rumor, remember, a transfer is not just one phone call. It involves player negotiations, club negotiations, lawyer, agents, medical staff, league registration, payment structure, add-on, release clauses, and financial fair play consideration. That's why some deals are completed in 24 hours. Example, the Bernardo Silva to Real Madrid. It was just easy. While others take an entire summer. And now when someone says option to buy, sell-on clause, release clause, or amortization, you all know exactly what they mean. This is the first part of what's happened on transfers. We're going to do the second part when we go into in-depth look of the transfer window and transfer negotiations. Football UTV out.